The night air was crisp against my skin as I stepped onto the balcony, a glass of champagne clutched perhaps too tightly in my hand. The party inside continued without us, the muffled laughter and music creating a distant soundtrack to what was about to unfold. I hadn't planned to end up alone with him here, 12 stories above the city, where the lights below sparkled like fallen stars against the darkness. It was Marcus who had suggested we step outside. Marcus, with his knowing smile and eyes that seemed to see right through me every time we were in the same room. We'd known each other for nearly 2 years, colleagues at the architecture firm where I'd been trying to make my mark. Marcus had already made his, the golden boy, the visionary, the one whose designs always seemed to capture exactly what clients didn't even know they wanted. I was more methodical, more practical, the one who made sure his brilliant ideas could actually stand without collapsing. We were opposites in many ways, yet something had always simmered between us, unspoken but undeniable. I still remember the first time I noticed him looking at me differently. It was during a late-night session, working against a deadline, when everyone else had gone home. He'd brought coffee, placed it beside my keyboard without a word, and our fingers had brushed. Just briefly. But the contact had sent electricity up my arm, and when I looked up to thank him, the intensity in his gaze made the words die in my throat. Since then, there had been 100 small moments, conversations that lasted longer than necessary, standing slightly too close during presentations, text messages late at night that had nothing to do with work. "You're quiet tonight, Alex," Marcus said now, breaking the silence as he moved to stand beside me at the railing. The city sprawled before us, a tapestry of lights and shadows. "Something on your mind?" How could I tell him that he was what was on my mind? That he had been for months? That I'd tried to date other people, tried to focus on my career, tried everything to stop thinking about what it would be like if we ever acknowledged this thing between us? "Just enjoying the view," I replied, taking a sip of champagne to hide my nervousness. "It's not every day we get invited to parties in penthouses." Marcus laughed, and the sound warmed something inside me despite the cool evening air. "True. Though I think Diane only invited us because she's hoping we'll redesign her bathroom for free." "Probably," I agreed, smiling despite myself. This was what made it so difficult. How easy it was to be around him, how natural our conversations felt, how he could make me laugh even when my stomach was tied in knots. The sounds of the city created a gentle backdrop to our conversation. Distant car horns, the faint thrum of music from a rooftop bar a few buildings away, the occasional burst of laughter from inside the party. The balcony was lit only by the soft glow spilling from the apartment and the ambient city light, casting Marcus's face in gentle shadows that emphasized his strong jawline and the thoughtful set of his eyes. "Do you remember that project in Chicago last year?" he asked suddenly, turning to face me more directly. "The one with the impossible deadline? How could I forget? 3 days straight of barely sleeping, ordering takeout to the office at midnight, Marcus's sleeves rolled up as he bent over drafting tables, the two of us arguing passionately about load-bearing walls at 3 in the morning. It was during that project that I'd realized my feelings went beyond professional admiration or even friendship. "Of course," I said. "Why?" "That was when I knew," he said simply, his voice dropping lower. "Knew what?" I asked, though something in his tone made my heart rate quicken. "That you were different. That what I felt for you wasn't just." He trailed off, searching for words. "It wasn't just the usual." The usual. I knew what he meant. Marcus had a reputation at the firm. Charming, flirtatious, never serious about anyone for long. I'd watched him go through a string of brief relationships, had consoled heartbroken interns, had even warned new employees not to take his attention too seriously. And yet here he was, looking at me with an expression I'd never seen before. "Marcus," I started, not even sure what I was going to say. Warning him off? Encouraging him? I didn't get the chance to decide. "I've tried to ignore it," he continued, taking a step closer. "God knows I've tried, Alex. We work together. You're brilliant at what you do. The last thing I want is to complicate that." The space between us seemed to be shrinking, though I hadn't moved. The sounds of the party faded further away, as if someone was gradually turning down the volume on everything except our conversation. "But every time I convince myself to let it go, you do something that pulls me right back in," he said, his voice a mixture of frustration and something like wonder. "The way you defend your ideas in meetings. How you remember everyone's coffee orders. That little frown you get when you're concentrating on a difficult problem. I should have said something, should have stopped him or encouraged him or at least acknowledged what he was saying. But I stood frozen, caught between fear and hope, between professional caution and personal longing. I told myself it was just attraction, Marcus continued, taking another step toward me, that it would pass. But it's been 2 years, Alex, and it's only gotten stronger. The champagne glass was still in my hand, and I realized I was gripping it so tightly my knuckles had gone white. I set it down on the small table beside us, needing both hands free, though for what, I wasn't sure. You've never said anything. I finally managed, my voice sounding strange to my own ears. All this time. Neither have you, he pointed out, a hint of his usual confidence returning. But I've seen how you look at me when you think I won't notice. Had I been that transparent? The thought was mortifying, yet also somehow relieving. All those months of careful neutrality, of maintaining professional distance, of second-guessing every interaction, and he had known anyway. I wasn't sure, I admitted. You're you. And I didn't want to be just another person who fell for your charm. Something flashed in his eyes. Hurt, perhaps, or recognition. Is that what you think? That you'd be just another conquest? Before I could answer, the balcony door slid open, and light spilled out as one of our colleagues stepped outside, phone in hand. Oh, sorry, she said, noticing us. Just needed to make a call. Carry on. She retreated back inside, but the moment had been broken. Marcus stepped back slightly, running a hand through his hair in a gesture I recognized as frustration. We should probably go back in, I said, though it was the last thing I wanted. No, Marcus said, with such certainty that I was startled. No, I'm not letting another interruption stop this conversation. We've had 2 years of interruptions and excuses and professional boundaries. He was right, of course. Every time we'd gotten close to acknowledging what was between us, something had intervened, a deadline, a colleague, our own hesitation. Always, we'd retreated to the safety of our working relationship, pretending the tension wasn't building with each passing month. What do you want, then? I asked, surprising myself with my directness. Marcus didn't answer immediately. Instead, he moved to the edge of the balcony, looking out over the city as if gathering his thoughts. I followed, standing beside him, our arms almost but not quite touching on the railing. I want to stop pretending, he said finally. I want to know if what I feel is just in my head, or if you feel it too. I want. He turned to face me, and the intensity in his expression made my breath catch. I want to know what would happen if we stopped being so damn careful around each other. The air between us seemed to crackle with possibility. I thought about all the reasons this was complicated. We worked together, his reputation, my own career ambitions, the potential fallout if things went wrong. But in that moment, with the city spread out below us and Marcus looking at me like I was the only thing that mattered, none of those reasons seemed important enough. I feel it too, I said quietly, the words both terrifying and liberating. I have for a long time. Something changed in Marcus's expression, relief, joy, determination, all mixed together. He moved closer, and suddenly I found myself backed against the railing, not uncomfortably, but definitely intentionally. His hands came to rest on either side of me, not touching me, but effectively creating a space that was just ours, sheltered from the world. Alex, he said, my name on his lips sounding like both a question and an answer. He leaned in, close enough that I could feel his breath warm against my skin. Alex, he repeated, softer this time, almost reverently. The way he said my name, like it was something precious, something he'd been waiting to say properly for years, undid me completely. All the careful walls I'd built, all the professional distance I'd maintained, all the reasons I'd given myself for why this couldn't happen, they all crumbled in that moment. His face was inches from mine now, his eyes asking a question. In answer, I closed the distance between us, pressing my lips to his in a kiss that felt like both an ending and a beginning. His hands moved from the railing to my waist, pulling me closer as the kiss deepened, becoming something urgent and necessary. When we finally broke apart, both slightly breathless, I couldn't help but laugh softly. We're definitely going to complicate things, I said, resting my forehead against his. Some things are worth complicating, he replied, his thumb tracing a gentle path along my jawline. I've wanted to do that since the Chicago project. That long? I asked, surprised. Longer, he admitted. But that was when I knew it wasn't going away. I thought about the months of tension, the careful dance we'd been doing around each other, the moments when we'd almost acknowledged what was happening, but always pulled back at the last second. Why now? I asked. What changed? Marcus was quiet for a moment, his hands still on my waist, his body warm against mine. I got offered a position at the Seattle office, he said finally. Senior design lead. It's a big promotion. The news hit me like a physical blow. Seattle was across the country. If he took the job, we'd no longer be working together, which solved one problem but created another entirely. Congratulations. I managed, trying to sound sincere despite the sudden hollowness in my chest. When do you leave? I haven't accepted it yet, he said, his eyes never leaving mine. I wanted to know if I had a reason to stay. The implication of his words hung in the air between us. He was asking, in his way, if what was between us was serious enough to factor into a major career decision. It was both flattering and terrifying. We'd only just acknowledged our feelings, had shared exactly one kiss, and already we were talking about something that could affect the course of our lives. That's a lot of pressure to put on one kiss, I said, trying to lighten the moment even as my mind raced with implications. Marcus smiled, but his eyes remained serious. It's not about the kiss, Alex. It's about 2 years of working side by side, of understanding each other's minds, of building something together professionally that I think could translate to something personal. The kiss was just confirmation of what I already knew. Put that way, it didn't sound rushed at all. We weren't strangers who had just met. We were colleagues who had collaborated closely, who had seen each other at our best and worst, who had already built a foundation of mutual respect and understanding. I can't ask you to turn down a promotion for me, I said carefully. That wouldn't be fair. You're not asking. I'm considering my options, he replied. And you're one of those options, maybe the most important one. The weight of his words settled over me. This wasn't just about attraction or a momentary connection. Marcus was talking about something real, something with potential, something worth making sacrifices for. What if it doesn't work out? I asked, voicing the fear that had been holding me back all this time. What if we try this and it falls apart, and you've given up an opportunity for nothing? Marcus considered this, his expression thoughtful. That's a risk, he acknowledged. But so is taking the job and always wondering what might have happened if I'd stayed. So is spending the rest of my career taking safe options and never knowing what it would be like to really go after what I want. His honesty was disarming. There was none of the smooth charm he was known for, none of the practiced lines or confident assurances. This was Marcus stripped of his usual armor, being vulnerable in a way I'd rarely seen. And what do you want? I asked, needing to hear him say it explicitly. His hands tightened slightly on my waist, pulling me a fraction closer. You, he said simply. Us. A chance to see if what I feel for you is as real and lasting as I think it is. The directness of his answer took my breath away. In that moment, with the city lights twinkling below us and the sounds of the party a distant murmur, it seemed absurd that we had wasted so much time circling each other, pretending that what we felt wasn't extraordinary. I want that too, I admitted, the words both frightening and freeing. I have for a long time. The smile that spread across Marcus's face was unlike any I'd seen before. Not his usual confident grin or his professional smile, but something more genuine, more vulnerable, more real. So where does that leave us? He asked, his voice soft. It was a good question. We had acknowledged our feelings, had crossed the line from colleagues to something more, but the practical questions remained. His job offer, our working relationship, the potential complications that would inevitably arise. I don't know exactly, I said honestly, but I think it leaves us with a beginning. The rest we can figure out together. Marcus nodded, seeming satisfied with this answer. Together, he repeated, as if testing the word. I like the sound of that. He leaned in again, his lips finding mine in a kiss that felt like a promise. This time, when we broke apart, I didn't feel the need to question or analyze. For once, I simply allowed myself to be present in the moment, to feel the warmth of his body against mine, to acknowledge the rightness of finally being honest about what we meant to each other. The balcony door slid open again, and this time several colleagues spilled out, laughing and carrying drinks. Marcus didn't pull away as he might have before, though his hands moved from my waist to a more casual position, one arm draped lightly around my shoulders. There you two are, one of them called. We were wondering where you disappeared to. Just getting some air, Marcus replied easily, though the look he gave me was anything but casual. As our colleagues joined us on the balcony, the conversation shifted to work matters and office gossip. Marcus kept his arm around me, a subtle but clear statement that something had changed between us. I leaned into him slightly, still marveling at how quickly everything had transformed, how a single conversation had altered the course of what had seemed an immutable relationship. Later that night, as we said our goodbyes and stepped into the elevator together, Marcus took my hand in his. "No regrets?" he asked quietly. I thought about the complications ahead, the conversations we'd need to have with HR, the decisions about his job offer, the adjustments to our working dynamic. But I also thought about the relief of finally acknowledging what had been building between us for so long, the rightness I had felt in his arms, the possibility of something genuine and lasting. "No regrets," I confirmed, squeezing his hand. "Though I do have questions about this Seattle offer." Marcus laughed, pulling me closer as the elevator descended. "We have time to figure it out," he said. "All the time we need." As we stepped out into the night, the city alive around us, I felt a sense of possibility I hadn't experienced in years. Whatever came next, whether it was navigating workplace relationships or making decisions about jobs across the country, we would face it together. And that, I realized, was what had been missing all along. Not just the acknowledgement of our feelings, but the commitment to figuring out the complicated parts as a team. Marcus hailed a taxi, then turned to me with a question in his eyes. I nodded, answering the unspoken invitation, and as we slid into the back seat together, I knew that the moment on the balcony had been just the beginning. The real story, our story, was only just starting to unfold. In the days and weeks that followed, we would have many more conversations about boundaries and expectations, about careers and compromises, about what we wanted individually and together. There would be challenges, certainly, and moments of doubt. But whenever I found myself questioning whether we had made the right choice, I would remember that night on the balcony. The way he had pressed me gently against the railing, the way he had breathed my name like a prayer, and the certainty I had felt in that moment that some connections are worth the risk they require. And in the end, that certainty proved right. Marcus declined the Seattle position, but 6 months later, when an even better opportunity arose in our own office, he was the first choice for the promotion. Our relationship, far from complicating our professional lives, seemed to enhance them. We challenged each other, supported each other, and brought out the best in each other's work. And at night, when the office was quiet and the city lights sparkled below, we would sometimes return to that balcony where it all began, marveling at how a single moment of courage had changed everything. Some might say we were lucky, that workplace romances rarely end so well, that the complications usually outweigh the benefits. Perhaps that's true, but I prefer to think that what we found wasn't luck, but recognition. The wisdom to see what was valuable and the courage to reach for it, despite the risks. In a world full of practical considerations and professional boundaries, we had chosen to acknowledge something extraordinary, and in doing so, had found something worth building our lives around. So if you ever find yourself alone on a balcony with someone who makes your heart race, someone whose mind challenges yours, someone who looks at you like you're the answer to a question they've been asking for years, take the risk. Let them press you against the railing. Let them breathe your name like it's sacred. Let yourself acknowledge what you feel, even if it complicates everything. Because some complications aren't obstacles to be avoided, but opportunities to be embraced. Chances to build something real in a world that too often settles for what's safe. Total _char_count. 18,217.